You are looking at the towering Grand Tetons in Jackson Hole country. We're up there to fish Pacific Creek. Now, I've never been on one of these things before in my life. And I had a little trouble for the first 200 yards, but then began to get used to it. And I'll say one thing. Boy, it beats walking up those hills. When Jim told me, he says, Gad, he says, we're going to fish Pacific Creek. He says, it's not a big stream, so I had an idea. The word creek would be something like the streams you find in the Middle West and some parts of the country, which is very small streams. When I saw this creek, I was quite surprised. It was really a good-sized river. And very fast, clear, and very cold water. There it is. Boy, what a beautiful, beautiful stream. Now, what we're going to catch here is cutthroats. Now, here's what we're going to use. I'm not going to use flies at all. I'm going to use grasshoppers. And I haven't fished a grasshopper myself in 20 years. So you'll see we're not making any cast at all. We just simply got the grasshopper on there, let him work ahead in the current. But every time I got that grasshopper up under that bank, I picked up a fish. And it's a lot of fun. These cutthroats are quite a fish. I didn't use a net at all on these fish. They're beautifully colored. The markings is perfect on them. There's Floyd, a very good friend of mine and a doggone good fisherman. And if he hasn't got that cigar, he can't fish. He hadn't had a bite. You get one in a minute. Floyd had quite a handicap. He's fishing right underneath that old tree, and he got hung up in it once. This water is terribly cold. There's a lot of snow water still coming down from the mountain, from the stream. It's awfully cold. When you pick up that fish out of that water, just like getting a hold of a bunch of ice. Floyd finally got a hold of one, and he lost him. But boy, he's a good fisherman. He caught a lot of fish that day. Like most of these fellows that live in that country, after you fish a while and catch 3 or 4 fish, you say, well, let's move on, go on up the stream. The river makes quite a few bends, and there's lots of deep holes. And the flow of water will circulate around in there, and if you can get a grasshopper underneath those big brush piles, chances are you'll get a fish every time you get under there. And that's what I did. The first cast that I made, and drifted that grasshopper under that brush, I got a good fish. And Jim told me that some fish in there weigh 5 to 6 pounds, and I didn't get one. I wish I had it, but I didn't. I get this fish in there, I got it down low to slide him up over those rocks where the water is. And just as I reached for him, he flopped loose and got away from me. There he goes. And I reached and I grabbed, and I never did touch him at all, and he got away from me. Well, that's fishing, you know. Well, there's plenty more good ones in that pool, believe it or not. So I'm going to get myself a real good-looking grasshopper. There he is. I'm going to hook him right above that little shell. The point of the hook comes out below. Now, if I can get that up in there and float it underneath that log pile, I'll gamble that I'll get a fish. It went under there all right there. I thought sure that I'd get hung up, but I did not. Only into 3 or 4 nice fish. Sometimes the current will swing it out, and sometimes it'll swing it in. And you got to take that chance of getting it underneath that brush. I'm using a sinking line, so I don't have any trouble getting it down. And I finally hooked him. And these are nice fish, beautiful fish. That's the kind of fishing I always dream about. Isn't that a gorgeous looking thing? Just back of the gill cover, they got an orange stripe right down there. So that's why they call them the fish they are. Jim said, save these fish. We're going to have a big fish Friday night. So I saved what I caught here and what Floyd caught. Brother, we had a real feed. Look at that. Isn't that a gorgeous bunch of fish?